In 1984, director Milos Forman and star F. Murray Abraham gave the world a scandalous foray into the legendary life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
In 2019, we returned to Europe to try one of Ireland's most famous whiskeys.
The film is Amadeus.
The whiskey is Redbreast 12.
And we'll review them both. This is the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And this week we are looking at the 1984 film Amadeus.
Now, this is the 35th anniversary of this Oscar award-winning film.
35 years.
Yeah, that's a really long time.
It really is.
One might say it's 35 rotations of the Earth around the sun.
Indeed. Today we're actually coming to you live from Brad's house.
Brad's house.
It is a beautiful summer day, so we decided to sit out on the patio and try some whiskey.
Today, we are super excited to try some Redbreast 12 year. As you all know, Irish whiskey is the best, so I'm really curious to try this out.
Yeah, we've just come off of our summer of bourbon, 6 straight weeks of bourbon, and this is our first week returning to other whiskeys.
And beyond the fact that we're done with the summer of bourbon, we're right in the middle of the Bonus Bonanza.
Bonus Bonanza. So we're coming at you with 5 straight weeks of bonus content, as you know by now.
It's going to be wonderful.
We hope that you're enjoying both the Bob and Brad bonus episodes as well as the My Favorite Movie episodes. Today, we're actually going to do something a little different with the episode. We're going to go a little bit shorter today. I'm sure some of you are already rejoicing about that. But at the end of today's episode, we are going to throw over to an interview we conducted down in Lexington, Kentucky with a great retailer called Justin's House of Bourbon. They specialize in unique and...
They are purveyors of fine whiskeys.
That's right. Vintage. That was the word I was thinking of. Vintage whiskey. So we're going to wrap up a little bit quicker today, but please stick around and listen to our interview with Justin Sloan from Justin's House of Bourbon. All right, but back to Amadeus. Brad, the $1 million question. Had you seen this movie before this viewing?
I had never heard of this movie until I saw it on the list that you gave me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like people who have seen this movie really hold it in high regard. But it kind of, it's a hard sell. It's a movie about classical music. It's not like it's, Bohemian Rhapsody where you can just sell somebody on the idea of Freddie Mercury.
Bob, can you tell me how much you loved the movie Bohemian Rhapsody?
Bohemian Rhapsody is my favorite film of all time, Brad.
Wow.
Yeah.
It beat out Casablanca. Huh?
It really did.
Yeah. Can you really delve into the depth of the characters portrayed? And
I don't think a movie has ever been better written than Bohemian Rhapsody.
Man, we should probably do this next week.
I think we should. Or we could just stick to Amadeus because it's 1,000,000 times better.
So here's the thing. The problem with Amadeus...
Let's hear it.
It's just too long.
It's a long movie.
It's a really long movie. And in my mind, I feel like you could cut out 30 minutes of this and it would be a great movie.
You know what's funny is I have always really, really liked this movie. And I sat down to watch it with my wife and I said, all right, listen, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And at the end of it, I said, wow, I still really like this movie. But a half hour was the number I came up with too. It could have had 30 minutes less in it and it would have been nearly perfect.
Yeah, I remember I got it on an old school DVD, and I actually had to switch the DVD to the other side to finish it.
Yeah.
And so, literally on the tracker at the bottom, it said that I had 1 hour and 47 minutes. When I put it on the other side and it said that I had 59 minutes left, I was just like, oh man, I need a drink.
So here's the funny thing. I actually made sure that Brad got the old school DVD because this movie, when it came out in 1984, it clocked in at 2 hours and 40 minutes. In 2002, the director Milos Forman had the opportunity to create a director's cut, and he did.
And he screwed the pooch.
He upped it to 3 hours in length. He added 20 minutes of material. Now, there's one scene that was cut out that a lot of people think was kind of a key scene, where the main character of the movie, Salieri, kind of humiliates and shames and seduces Mozart's wife. And we'll get into that, the scene where that's been deleted from. But the rest of it, I've been told, is not even worth it at 3 hours in length. And so I said, Brad, listen, if you don't want to be watching this movie for 3 hours, you need to go to the library and find the old 2 hour and 40 minute version because you can't find it on DVD or Blu-ray anymore. They only released the 3 hour version.
Yeah, I think that director's cuts are really interesting beasts.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you do get into a movie that you know and love, and you're like, wow, like I wish that this had been in the original showing.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, whether it's studio pressure or, time crunch, they're not always able to finish it the way that they want to. But the problem is a lot of times you get into director's cuts and it feels like the director is just indulging themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that what really bothers me about this director's cut is that this movie won Best Picture. This movie was on the original AFI Top 100 list, and it wasn't the director's cut. It was the 2-hour and 40-minute version. And in addition to Best Picture, this movie actually won 8 Oscars.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it won picture.
Can I guess?
Let's do it.
Costume.
It won costumes.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be original music because...
Yeah, and it didn't win for music.
Okay. Did any of the actors win?
Yes.
I'm going to guess that Salieri or F. Murray Abraham won supporting actor?
No, Best Actor.
He won Best Actor.
F. Murray Abraham, Best Actor.
I didn't know if they would classify him or Tom Hulce as the main actor.
Yeah, so this is one of those rare years where both of the lead actors were competing against each other for Best Actor.
See?
Yeah.
So I was right.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
Wow, that's really interesting. What else did it win?
So it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Art Direction and Costumes and Sound and Makeup. And
How
then
do you define art direction?
It's also been called set direction in the past. It's kind of like everything on screen. If a character lives in an apartment, it's how they decorate the apartment. You know, is there a bag of chips on top of the refrigerator? All those decisions are made by somebody on set, and that's considered part of the art direction.
Okay.
So, Brad, you said you'd never even heard of this movie before we sat down to watch it this time.
Is there another movie called Amadeus
I don't think so.
about a snake?
No.
Because when I first saw the title for this, I legit thought it was going to be like a suspense horror film about like a giant snake like chasing people down and killing them.
Before we hit record, I had to remind Brad that the name of the movie is actually Amadeus and not Asmodeus, as you like to call it.
I'm just gonna
just keep calling it
Wolfgang
Asmodeus.
Asmodeus Mozart.
So when you sat down to watch Amadeus,
what? I did not watch any such movie.
What were your thoughts going into it? What were you expecting?
I really didn't know what to expect. I definitely was not expecting Mozart to laugh the way he laughed.
Yeah.
That, I just don't know if... I don't know. Is there any historical proof that he laughed like
I don't think so.
Donkey?
There's not a lot of historical proof that anything that happened in this movie happened.
Oh, that's good to know
Yeah.
because it was a very interesting movie, to say the least.
Yeah.
So going into the movie... Well, forget going into the movie. We should probably just do Brad
Let's just do Brad Explains.
Yeah.
Sure.
I should probably explain this movie for about 2 hours and 47 minutes.
I think so.
It might take that long
I think so.
to explain everything that happens. The very shortest synopsis is, this is supposedly a story about the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. However, it's a story that is told through the eyes of one of his main rivals, his musical rivals, Salieri? Salieri.
Yep.
Okay. So Salieri is this Italian guy who is the court composer in Austria for the emperor, Ed Rooney.
Ed Rooney was the name of the emperor.
Yes, Emperor Ed Rooney.
It's just so funny to see the guy from Ferris Bueller
That killed
as
me.
the emperor.
That threw me off. Like, when I saw him come on screen, I was like, wait a second, is that Principal Rooney?
Yeah.
So anyways, it's about their rivalry over the years and how Salieri is a older musician who realizes the brilliance of Mozart, and he spends his entire life trying to ruin Mozart's career.
Yeah.
And according to him at the end, he kills Mozart.
Right.
And so the whole movie is told as a flashback. Salieri is in a prison asylum.
Basically, yeah, like an insane asylum.
An insane asylum, and he is giving his confession to a priest.
Yep.
And he's talking about all of the different things that they did and how poorly he treated Mozart and how he pretended to befriend him and the internal struggle that brought.
Yeah.
It was really well done.
Yeah. So I want to talk for a second about Milos Forman, the director of this movie. He actually was very famous in Hollywood at this point because he directed in 1975, he did the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. And this was kind of like his big return to form. And what I love about what Forman does in this movie is you can tell he's kind of having fun. Like, there's some kind of like weird sadistic jokes going on in this movie. There's a moment where Salieri, as the old man talking to the priest, is talking about his childhood and how his dad was really hard and oppressive on him. And then he says, and you know what happened next? A miracle. And cut to his dad's dead.
Yeah.
And it's like this joyous music.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool to see how Forman isn't taking it's really serious subject matter, but he finds ways to be really playful with it in almost like perverse ways.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about the movie is that the way he used the classical music truly portrayed it in the best sense possible, so that you could understand why classical music has been a thing for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yep.
The way he used it, especially in that scene where, you know, Salieri says that his dad died, and they give that triumphant bit of music. It's just perfect. It fits everything that he did. And so I think really the reason this movie won Best Picture in my mind would be because the music was used so perfectly to illustrate and illuminate where the characters were at any point in the movie. This
seems like the kind of movie that would come across really pretentious and stuffy. Like,
oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? But then you turn it on and there's fart jokes and no one's talking with an accent. Everyone has an American accent.
Right.
And I think Forman is doing this thing where he wants this movie to be as accessible as possible, because in order to take you to some of the darker, more theological things that are going on in this story, like, you have to be on board from the beginning. And that's kind of what I love about it, is it's like, we don't care about historical accuracy. We're not going to be speaking a different language. No one's going to have an accent, but you're going to be along for the ride anyway.
Right. And like, I could see somebody doing this movie in 2019 or 2020 and doing it all in German and Italian.
Yeah.
And, you know, speaking those languages. And I could see it being a really beautiful artistic movie, but I couldn't see it winning Best Picture.
No, not at all. So I do want to talk about the story a little bit, because this was adapted from a play, which had been a really successful play, and the author of the play actually adapted it to the screenplay. This movie, from like the first minute almost, is a movie that's about someone's relationship with God. F. Murray Abraham, who plays Salieri, he's talking about how he saw in Mozart God's gifts of music perfected. And he becomes so enraged and so jealous because he'd been trying to please God with his gift for so long, and he realizes he's not as good as Mozart, that he vows not to make Mozart his enemy, but to make God his enemy. And in order to kind of get one over on God, he wants to destroy Mozart and prove that he can win against God.
Yeah, he essentially turns Mozart into the paragon of God, like the champion that God has sent to this earth to represent himself.
Yeah, sure.
And he had a misconceived notion that he was supposed to be that champion, that he was supposed to be the one representing God's musical genius on this earth. And then he runs into Mozart, and 10 seconds later, he just realizes, I can never come close to this young man's genius.
That's true.
And there's something about this that, like, I related very deeply to Salieri, because having run track for 10 years, all through middle school, high school, and college, you come to realize that at some point I could train like an Olympic athlete. I could train 6 days a week, 2 or 3 workouts a day. I could have all the nutrition. I could do everything right. And yet, some people are still just going to be faster than me.
And they could just roll out of the track eating a Big Mac and just run circles around you.
And just run circles around me.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of where Salieri felt, of this sense of like, I've worked so hard at this, and I do have a moderate measure of talent that has been granted to me, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's not just that there's someone that's better than him. It's that Mozart's better than him, and he doesn't even try.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he flaunts it. Like, he can just roll in. There's this great scene where Mozart first gets kind of summoned to the emperor's palace, and Salieri has composed a march to play when Mozart comes in. And Mozart hears it one time through and says, hey, can I have a go at that? And they're all like, what, you mean after hearing it once?
Don't you need the music?
Yeah. And he sits down and basically says, oh yeah, this is really simple. And then he plays for a minute and he says, oh, it just repeats from here, right?
The rest is just the same, isn't it? Doesn't really work, does it? Did you try? Shouldn't it be a bit more? Or this? This? Yes. Better? What do you think?
That doesn't quite work, does it? Why don't we do something else here? And he basically rewrites Salieri's music in front of him. And that's kind of the turning point for Salieri.
That's where he realizes, I need to destroy this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I think the most interesting thing is the very first scene that you see Mozart. You see him chasing his future wife around an empty room in this huge palace. And he is... I mean,
he's obnoxious.
Yeah. He's raunchy. He's kind of gross. Like he's making like little kid jokes. Yeah. Basically, like you would expect a 13-year-old boy to make.
Yep.
And yet I don't know. How old would you say he is at the start?
I don't know. I mean, maybe 20, 22.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be in his 20s, and yet he's acting like a 12-year-old.
Right.
And Salieri sees this, and he's like, "Oh, well, this is Mozart." Like, he doesn't take his craft seriously. He doesn't care about it the way I do.
And this is one of the things I love about this movie is it really does go to some places in the human psychology where we don't like to admit that we've had these thoughts before. Of like when you are presented with someone who's better than you at something, you kind of do question, is this fair? Like, haven't I been working hard enough at this? And how can this person just be better than me? And there's some great quotes that they give Salieri to kind of drive this point home. He starts talking about how he came to Vienna and he says that I made a name for myself here. And then he says, everybody liked me. I liked myself until he came.
Yeah.
And you get this sense that Salieri's sense of self-worth is wrapped up in the approval of others.
Right.
And I think that at the end of the day, he knows he's not as good as Mozart. And that's what sends everything crashing down, is that he knows I will no longer have the approval of others because they can see just as plainly as I can that there's someone out there that's even better than me. But the place Salieri goes with it is, all right, well, if I can't be the best, then there is no God. I am the enemy of God, and I will destroy God's creation.
Which is a funny place to come to, because he does kind of say that, like, there must be no God, but I'm going to be the enemy of God. Which is like, if there isn't a God, then how could you be his enemy?
Well, he starts going through these... He really does go through kind of a dark night of the soul, though, because he has this great quote where he's talking to the priest about God, and he says, if God didn't want me to praise him with music, why did he implant the desire in me, like a lust in my body, and then deny me the talent? I mean, it really is. It gets into these really complex areas of, Salieri genuinely did have the desire to make music. And for a while, at least, he did have the desire to praise God through music. But then he even recognizes the limitations of himself.
Right. And he comes to this point where he's still writing music and he's still, writing operas. And at one point, one of his operas is announced as the greatest opera in Vienna.
Right.
And the Emperor Rooney announces him as... the greatest composer that the world has ever seen.
Right.
And all this. But you get the sense, even in those moments, I think the problem with Salieri is that he initially found all of his self-worth in the opinions of others.
Yeah.
But once Mozart arrives, he only finds his self-worth in Mozart's opinion.
Absolutely.
Of him. And so even when the emperor announces him to the public as the greatest composer in the world, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And his anger is still present within his heart because he personally knows that he isn't.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the performances for a minute? We're going to get ready to break here and drink some whiskey, but there really are only two big performances in this movie, and that's F. Murray Abraham as Salieri and Tom Hulce as Mozart. So Brad, tell me about both of them. Which performance did you prefer, or did you think one stuck out more than the other, or did they work together really well?
That's so hard because... There's kind of that thing where if a character annoys you, does that mean that they, you don't like their performance, or they're just really good at being what they were supposed to be? And that's kind of where I would place Tom Hulce as Mozart. Like the way he laughs,
Oh, yeah.
makes me want to strangle a small cat.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
And I think it's supposed to.
and that's the thing. It's supposed to, but does that make me like his performance or hate his performance?
Yeah, sure.
Like, so he kind of drove me nuts, but it wasn't just in the way that he laughed. It's in the way that he approached the world, in the way that he was just so flippant, and he was so... But in the end, that's exactly what they wanted him to do. So
Yeah.
I would honestly say that I think Tom Hulce gave a better performance.
You know, I would actually agree. Salieri's performance, F. Murray Abraham as Salieri, he basically gets to walk around chewing scenery all day. Like, as the old man, he gets to be this diabolical, listen to what I did to God's creation. As a young man, he gets to be this sort of vengeful person. And I think the harder performance is Tom Hulce as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
It's Asmodeus.
Asmodeus. And that's because you see where he goes from, a 20-something, carefree, immature, to seeing his life kind of get destroyed piece by piece, and how every opera he writes, less and less people come. The emperor is not satisfied with his music. He becomes more and more destitute and desperate for money. And I think by the end, where you see Mozart on his deathbed, that vision of that young carefree boy is completely gone. And I think Tom Hulce delivers a fantastic performance all the way through the film.
Yeah, he really showcases the ability to devolve. You know, a lot of characters in a lot of movies that we see, we want to see them grow, and we want to see them move forward and become better people by the end.
Yeah.
You can't say that about Mozart.
No.
And so to turn in a performance that Tom Hulce did of showcasing somebody's descent into madness, descent into destitution and poverty, he really portrays Mozart in a phenomenal way.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about Elizabeth Barrage's performance. I'm really curious of what you thought about her in this movie.
I don't know what I think about her. And I think in some degree, like, Milos Forman cast that role perfectly, because she kind of just does come across as like a little girl.
Yes.
That she's completely oblivious to whatever's going on. But at the same time, I don't know that she's a fantastic actress.
Yeah, that was my struggle. I couldn't tell if she was trying to be cute or if she just kind of like was cute but didn't really know how to act.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I thought she did certain parts really well. When she got really angry about things,
Yep.
I thought she came across really strongly.
Yep.
That she was angry with Mozart's dad for mooching off of them, and she gets angry with Mozart for the way that he's treating her and just spending money and not working on the things he needed to work on.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I thought she turned in an extremely convincing performance. But for the rest of the movie, when she's just kind of this cute, naive little girl, you kind of wonder, like, I didn't know if there was really any acting going on.
Yeah, completely agree.
So I was a little unsure about her. How do you feel like the rest of the supporting cast did as a whole?
I think everybody played their roles well, but everyone else in the movie is kind of a one-dimensional character. So it wasn't like they were really fleshing people out. If you were a good guy, you were a good guy. If you were a bad guy, you were a bad guy. And that's who you played.
And if you're the emperor, you're the emperor.
You're the emperor. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of struggled with this movie a little bit. I just felt like there was so much focus paid on Salieri and Mozart. But with it being a 2-hour and 47-minute movie, you did spend a lot of time with other characters. And I just didn't know if I felt like the actors in the movie really did a great job in all the supporting roles.
Yeah. Brad, there's a ton of directions we can go with this. And I'm really excited to get into more of our analysis after the break. But for now, I think that we need to hop over to Ireland and try some whiskey.
So we are here trying some Redbreast Irish whiskey. It's a 12-year.
Yeah. This is their standard whiskey. So they basically start out at 12-year. What I did was we actually bought a sample pack of Redbreast, and it just comes in these 50 milliliter shot sizes. So Brad and I are sharing the 12-year. They also have their Lustau and their 15-year. But today we're just sipping on the Redbreast 12. Now this clocks in at 80 proof, so pretty much just a standard whiskey.
Right.
Brad, what are you picking up on the nose of this one?
It kind of smells like a stream coming out of the mountains.
Oh, wow.
Like a little bit of moss.
This sounds like complete BS. Are you just making this up?
No, I'm serious, man. It smells really refreshing.
Yeah. You know, I'm getting two things on this, and it's really interesting. I'm getting some smoke that I'm used to getting on a Scotch. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily peat, but definitely some sort of smoke. And then I'm getting a ton of fruit as well. I get a lot of like pear on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're picking up fruit, but I definitely am. So how would you score this out on the nose?
I'm going to give this a 7.5 on the nose.
7.5?
I'm really enjoying where it takes us.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 7 on the nose. It's definitely interesting, and it makes me want to try it. All right, on the taste. Brad, what are you picking up on the taste?
So it's a little thin.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit thinner than I would expect. And I know that a lot of the Irish whiskeys, they don't have the heaviness that you get from a bourbon. But this one, I don't know. It's thin and it's not bringing a lot of flavor.
It's very sweet. It is thin. It's like a darker fruit flavor. It's not citrus. I can't tell I can't place it yet. It's almost got some weird like tropical notes to me.
Yeah.
Like a mango or pineapple.
I was literally just thinking it does kind of have that sweetness that you would get from like pineapple.
Yeah, for sure. So not the pear that I was picking up on the nose. I do get a little bit of smoke, and I'm kind of surprised at that.
Yeah, it kind of hits you a little bit on the back of your tongue. Mm-hmm. That smoke hits, and it's pleasant. It's really nice.
I am wondering why they watered this down to 80 proof. I feel like this could be a phenomenal 90, 95 proof.
Literally just thinking like 90 to 95
Yeah.
would be great for this whiskey.
Yeah, it's a little too thin, but I don't know if that really goes into taste for me. I like the taste a lot. I think I would give the taste an 8.
I'm going to give the taste a 7.5. The first moment it hit my tongue, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
But the more I've sat here and sipped on more of it,
Yep.
I'm really enjoying this a lot.
I feel like this could be a really dangerous whiskey because it goes down so smoothly because it is a thinner whiskey.
Yep.
There's not a harsh burn or an aftertaste.
Yeah, this is a good one to sip on.
For sure. Which leads us into finish.
Yeah.
What do you think about the finish?
The finish is smooth, man. It's super smooth. You get that little hint of smoke on the back of your tongue. But the longer it sits on your palate, the more that sweetness comes out.
Yeah, it's very pleasant.
And I don't feel like I get that with a lot of whiskeys. A lot of times I feel like you have that rye in there, and that rye will sit on the back of your tongue and almost sours.
Yeah.
Whereas this, the longer it sits on my tongue and in my palate, it tastes more and more sweet.
Definitely.
So I'm going to give the finish an 8.5.
8.5. Wow.
Yeah, it's sitting super well for me.
Yeah, it really is refreshing. And it doesn't dry my mouth out. It doesn't burn going down. I do wish that there was something more to it, though. And I think I like it. It's pleasant, but it's just not enough for me. I'm going to give the finish a 6.5.
Yeah, I think this is one that, as I'm sitting here, we're drinking it straight, like we always do.
Yeah, sure.
I could see this one being good chilled.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether or not you put an ice cube in or you put it into a chilled glass,
Yep.
I could see this being really good, just a little bit of chill.
Yeah. All right, so overall balance, Brad. Nose, taste, finish. What do you think?
I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think it's a solid balance from start to finish. The nose does not necessarily give you everything you're going to get on the taste, but it's really well balanced. It's very smooth.
Yeah, I don't think any component of the nose, taste, finish stuck out or led me to believe something else was going to happen. You know, right from the time we smelled it, it was very bright. It was very fruity. You knew what you were getting. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 7 on the balance. Which brings us to our last category. Now that category is value. Redbreast is an expensive whiskey. It just is. And they label it on the bottle as coming from a single pot still. I don't really know how much difference that makes. I think that's mostly just marketing. But a fifth of Redbreast in the state of Ohio will put you back $64.99.
$64.
It's a $65 bottle of whiskey.
I did not know that.
Yeah. This is in the upper tier of Irish whiskeys. This is what you get if you're going classy. It's not Jameson. It's not Tullamore Dew. You get a bottle of Redbreast and people know that you mean business.
Wow, I did not realize it was going to cost that much.
Yeah.
Honestly, obviously that's going to push my score down a little bit.
Yep.
Honestly, this is a really good, like you can taste that this is a $65 bottle of whiskey. I would pay like 40 to 45 for it.
Yeah, tops.
So I guess I'm going to give it on value a 4.5.
I think I'm right there with you, Brad, because if this wasn't 80 proof, I think I might feel differently. But the fact that they watered it all the way down to the lowest possible proof that you can call something whiskey and then charge $65 for it.
I struggle with that.
Yeah, I do too. All right, so what does that bring you out to?
That brings me out. We were doing really well. I thought we might break the 40 mark. I'm at a 35.5.
It brings me out to a 33.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that brings us out to a little bit over a 34 out of 50. You know, not terrible, but we're at about, we're at a 68 out of 100 now. What really brought it down was that value score. You know, if you really like Irish whiskey and you want to have a nice, recognizable, fancy, classy bottle on your shelf, then, knock yourself out. But I don't see myself ever spending $65 on this.
Yeah, I've had some bourbons and whiskeys and scotches that I would much rather pay $60 to $70 for than this.
Yeah, kind of a disappointing way to end it because like we both said, it's very pleasant. We enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good whiskey, and if we didn't add in the value category, I would have been at a 31 out of 40.
Yeah.
Which is a really good score.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that value, man, you're paying, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Yeah.
So this has been Redbreast 12. Brad, any final thoughts? And would you recommend?
I would recommend. It's a good, pleasant drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
If you're out at a bar and you can find it reasonably priced, get, a glass of it, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing what the price of the bottle is, this is probably going to put you back $10 to $12 to try at a bar.
Right.
And I think it's probably worth that, just to say you tried it.
Yeah.
I just don't know if you're ever going to need to spend $65 on it.
Right.
I would recommend based on what the whiskey itself is, not based on the price.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm gonna give away a little bit of my Amadeus. I kind of feel similarly about the movie.
Interesting.
It's a really good movie. It's solid. It's fun. It's interesting.
There's just too much of it.
But whether it's the price, the amount of dollars you're going to spend on this bottle of whiskey, or the amount of minutes you're going to spend watching this movie, it's just a little bit too much. And I think if they cut it down about 30, whether it be $30 or 30 minutes, you'd have yourself a phenomenal whiskey/movie.
Well, let's talk about it. Why don't we get back into our analysis on Amadeus?
Osmodeus.
All right, so that was Redbreast 12. Kind of a disappointment.
Kind of.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, it's only the dollar amount that makes it a disappointment.
Absolutely. All right, so getting back into Amadeus, I think it's time that we kind of, put on our thinking caps a little bit and we get into what this movie's trying to say because...
Take our dunce caps off. Thinking caps put on.
Right. Like we said at the top of the episode, this movie is intensely theological. It's all about what people think of God and how people react to God. And I think that this movie has a lot to say. And Brad, I wanted to ask you about the big turning point for Salieri is when he throws that crucifix into the fire. Yeah. And he makes a vow that he's going to ruin Mozart. And the way that he talks about Mozart is by calling him God's incarnation. And he says, I'm going to ruin your incarnation. And my question is, does Salieri succeed? Because he says that he kills Mozart. And at the end of the movie, the priest is in such shock. And Salieri gets this one last kind of cackle where he gets to prove that he was right all along and that he has defeated God. How do you view the overall message of this movie? Does Salieri win?
Bob, he's in an insane asylum.
Yeah.
Talking to a priest.
Yeah.
He did not win.
You don't think so?
So, and honestly, the reason I would say it is the very opening scene of the movie when he is with the priest.
Yep.
And he plays the piano.
Yeah.
And the priest goes, no, I don't think I've heard that tune before. He goes, well, I wrote that tune.
Yeah.
And then he plays a tune by Mozart. And he goes, oh, I have heard that tune before.
Yeah.
And he starts humming it.
Yeah.
And Salieri says that was his tune.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And I think that's the answer to your question right there. Did he win? No. Mozart is the one that people remember. Mozart is the one who will last throughout the ages, not Salieri.
Well, and I think, and the fact that you can't even pronounce his name correctly, I think is what really...
Salieri?
Salieri?
Salieri.
Yeah. No, but even before that scene, the very first scene in the movie, Salieri is still living on his own in what looks like some sort of like retirement home in the 1700s. And he's locked himself in his bedroom, and they break down the door and they found that Salieri has slit his throat, that he's trying to kill himself because he feels so guilty about what he did to Mozart. And so the character that we get for the rest of the movie, the conniving sort of Salieri, he's just playing a game. He's toying with the priest. And I think that he beats the priest, but I don't think he's beaten God because it's clear that he's still so racked with guilt about what he did that he can't really feel justified in his actions or comfortably feel like he has won in this game against God.
I think his struggle with God starts because he just has a terrible view of God.
Yeah, I think that his conception of who God is and what God does is slanted from the beginning. You know, he tells God that his desire was for God to make him a composer, but he doesn't just say, make me a composer. He says, make me a composer and make me be immortal. He wanted something from God. He wanted what God could do for him. And I think his deal was, as long as you keep giving me fame and recognition, then I'll serve you. But the moment that it was kind of uphill sledding for him, the moment it got hard, it's very clear where his intentions were. It was never to honor God. It was to get recognition for himself.
Right. And the problem with that I struggle with is the fact that Mozart doesn't seem to have any intentions towards God or anyone other than himself.
Yeah.
He just wants to write his own music and enjoy his life.
Yeah.
And you almost see him rewarded for that with immortality, even though his current life was a struggle.
Right.
And so it's interesting because Salieri really desperately wanted immortality, but what he got was a pretty comfy life as the court, composer.
Right.
Mozart wanted a gleeful, joyful life where he's chasing women and, doing his own thing.
Yeah.
And he didn't get that by the end. He got poverty and destitution and madness, but what he did get was immortality.
Yeah.
So you almost see that both of the characters wanted what the others had.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and getting back to what you were saying too, I think when you look at a guy like Mozart, who doesn't seem to want anything to do with God, and creates this beautiful music that's, as Salieri sees it, like God inspired, I think there's two ways to respond to that. One way is to read the movie in a really cynical kind of atheistic way, which is to say, there is no God, or if there is a God, he doesn't care about classical music.
Right.
And you get to be a good classical musician by being a good classical musician. It's the story of hard work. I think the other way to see it is to see the flaw in Salieri's thinking from the beginning. Because Salieri saw it as a servant of God versus a pagan.
Yeah.
But I think the point that you and I are trying to make is that I don't really think Salieri was a servant of God to begin with. He might have thought himself that way, but he was kind of setting himself up for a fall based on what he wanted from God.
Right. And I think that's one of the big things where when you're dealing with issues like this, there's a level of self-awareness to know that what I want isn't always the best.
Yeah.
And usually that comes out in community, and they're the ones that are able to help you with that self-examination. And Salieri doesn't have that.
No.
He doesn't have anybody to draw him out of his pride and his desire to be immortal.
And part of that is the circle of people he's with. Everyone that's surrounding the emperor is a yes man.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's no keeping each other in check because everyone's just backstabbing and trying to get ahead. And when that's the community of people you surround yourself with, then you kind of bring it on yourself.
Right.
So, Brad, I want to take a really hard left turn here.
The hardest?
The hardest of left turns. We're going back to Tarantino. No, I'm just kidding. You said at the beginning that you had not even heard of Amadeus.
Right.
And I do think that this movie has really fallen out of fashion with people. I don't think a lot of people will have heard of it, but that doesn't mean that this movie is not still influencing media today. And I want to do a little experiment here, if you'll just give me a second. So I've got a clip to play for you, Brad.
A bit of a thought experiment?
Yeah. So if you remember the very first scene in the movie where Salieri is talking about the first time that he heard Mozart's music.
Yeah, he starts waxing poetical.
Yeah, it's saying like, this is the voice of God through music.
And then, suddenly, high above it, an oboe. A single note hanging there, unwavering. Until a clarinet took it over. Sweetened it into a phrase of such delight.
I want to throw your memory back to one of our favorite TV shows, and they did an homage to the movie Amadeus in an episode titled Best Burger in New York.
Robin, it's so much more than just a burger. I mean, that first bite. Oh, what heaven that first bite is. The bun, like a sesame-freckled breast of an angel resting gently on the ketchup and mustard below, flavors mingling in a seductive pas de deux. And then, a pickle. The most playful little pickle. And then a slice of tomato, a leaf of lettuce, and a patty of ground beef. So exquisite. Swirling in your mouth, breaking apart and combining again in a fugue of sweets and savories, so delightful. This is no mere sandwich of grilled meat and toasted bread, Robin. This is God. speaking to us through food.
So as you can see, Amadeus is still going strong in pop culture, Brad.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I've seen all of How I Met Your Mother. If you haven't seen it, go watch it right now.
It's a good show.
It's a really good show. But yeah, that clip, I would have never known that until this moment.
We were watching that, and I was like, this seems familiar. And then all of a sudden, I remembered Marshall Erickson talking about his burger. All right, so let's wrap this up. Brad, can you give this movie a score, and would you recommend?
I would give Amadeus an 8.
Okay.
And I would recommend.
Yeah.
It's a solid movie.
Yeah.
It's really well done. There's flaws. I think that all of the minor supporting characters could use some development and maybe better actors.
Yeah.
I think there's issues. And the main minor character is his wife, who has a pretty major role in the movie.
Sure.
But overall, I think that F. Murray Abraham gives in a B+ to A- performance. I think Tom Hulce is phenomenal.
Yeah, I do too.
He really gives an A+ performance
I do
for
too.
this. So yeah, I would give it an 8. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
It's not something that I would go back and watch again anytime soon.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie.
You know, I had this movie at a 10 on my IMDb, and after this viewing, I was like, I'm ready to take it down to an 8. I don't know if one viewing should really lower it too far, but I think for now I'm with you, Brad. I think I am going to give it an 8. This movie really could have been 25 to 30 minutes shorter, but it's definitely worth seeing. And if you have never seen Amadeus, I'm telling you, it's not the kind of movie you're probably expecting. It's not really pretentious and stuffy. It's a movie that asks big questions, but in a way that's accessible to people.
Yeah, it's amusing. It's fun. It draws you in. The drama of the movie spirals into insanity in a way that you don't often see in movies. It's really well done. But there's something about it that keeps me from giving it a 9 or 9.5, which would be my definition of you got yourself a heck of a movie.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's just something about it that keeps it from that level, but we're still talking about a movie that's an 8 out of 10.
Definitely.
This is a really good movie. I think it did deserve Best Picture and all the other awards it got, and I would definitely recommend.
Well, guys, we thank you so much for hanging in there with us today. I want to get us over to Lexington, Kentucky, where I sat down with Justin Sloan, the owner and founder of Justin's House of Bourbon. Let's listen into this interview. Hey, everybody, welcome into the podcast. I am coming to you live from Lexington, Kentucky. We are at Justin's House of Bourbon. I'm sitting here with Justin Sloan, who's the owner of Justin's House of Bourbon. Justin, how are you today?
Pretty good. Got a whiskey in the hand.
That's right. Yeah, we are day drinking, so we're doing real well.
Is it noon yet? No,
not even
We're
close.
Good.
Don't look at the clock.
We're good.
That's
We're
a
good.
rookie mistake. So Justin is operating one of the coolest little liquor stores that I've ever seen because it's solely centered on bourbon. And they specialize as well in vintage bourbon. And so I came in here yesterday. We had found them on Instagram, and Justin and I started up a conversation, and he offered very graciously to have us come in and do a little interview. And he has poured us a couple nice pours here. So why don't you tell everybody what we're sipping on today?
Yeah, right now we're hitting the American Spirit 15 year from Wild Turkey. It was a limited edition they did a few years ago. Probably it was before Campari bought them, so can't remember the year, but it came out probably 2007 or 9, something like that. But it's a fantastic whiskey. Then we also have a 15-year Knob Creek barrel pick that we did recently that was pretty weird when we picked it, but to have that many old barrels, we ended up with 5 barrels over 14 years old and 3 15s. So
wow.
It worked out great for us, and we ended up buying them all, and it's a great whiskey too.
Well, why don't we try this American Spirit?
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to you, sir.
That's everything you want in a Wild Turkey.
Wow, I'm
It's like
shocked
Wild
at how
Turkey on-
smooth this is, too.
Wild Turkey on steroids.
Yeah.
It's great. 100 proof.
Justin, why don't you tell me a little bit about the history of this place and how you got into collecting vintage bourbons?
Yeah. Well, start with myself, and just was a hobby that kind of went rogue. I was buying a bunch of whiskey, and if I liked it, I would buy multiples, and was in an IT world before this, and so had a little income to mess with. So I was buying whiskey, and met my business partner JT, the other Justin, around town. He's in Lexington, and his brother Seth, and their friend Bob did the Bourbon Review magazine. So got in with those guys, and I was planning on taking a couple years off of work, and I think 2 weeks later I was bought into the magazine and couldn't hardly stand it. So got dove into there, and then whenever we got wind that the House Bill 100 was going to be passed, I approached JT and said, "Hey, let's do this. We've got the wherewithal, we've got the collection, and we can do something really cool that nobody's done, and kind of beat everybody to the punch." And the law went into effect January 1st, and we were open February 6th or something.
Wow.
So it's been a fun little ride there. So we've been open since February 6, 2018, and we're working on a Louisville location now. So it's gonna be fun.
Can you explain a little bit to our non-Kentucky listeners what this law, how it helped you get open?
Oh, it's been such a good thing for the state, but basically it allows us to purchase unopened whiskey or really spirits that there's three things of criteria. It can't be open, can't be owned by a distillery, so hence we couldn't bypass the distributor, or it can't be available from the distributor. So if it meets those three criteria, we can buy it from a non-licensed individual and resell it by the pour or the bottle.
Wow.
So it opened it up a lot, and I'll tell you, the first, coming into this, I would say half the people that came in would be tourists, but it's about 80 to 85% of the people that walk in our door are from out of town. So it's been great for tourism, more in Lexington. So can imagine what that's going to do in Louisville.
And yesterday I was in here for probably a half hour, and someone came in from Chicago.
Yep.
And this morning someone's already come in from Washington D.C. So it's really cool. I mean, tell me what it's like as a business owner to know that people are coming from far and wide just to shop in your store.
It's crazy. And we had a guy from Canada yesterday.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty humbling and pretty cool that, obviously we're getting the word out there. We don't spend a lot of money on advertising. We let the bottles kind of do the advertising on Instagram and that kind of stuff. So it's really cool that the word's getting out. And I got a text message from a buddy who's a doctor in Illinois yesterday, and he said, "Hey, a guy came in and was talking about bourbon and who you were," and he's like, "I thought that was pretty cool." I was like, "That's pretty cool."
That's
so I mean,
awesome.
It's the word's getting out there, and like I said, you can look on our reviews, and it's nothing but 5-star reviews on Google, Facebook, and we really pride ourselves into talking to every customer that comes in, whether they're going to spend $10 or $20,000. We talk to them the same. We spend the same amount of time with them. The way our store's set up, you can't walk in without being greeted.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've instilled in our employees, and they do a fantastic job. Most of the reviews actually will mention an employee's name in the review. So it's been a very cool thing and humbling thing there, and that the employees take pride in doing what they're doing, and it's kind of given us an edge on any other really little mom and pop liquor stores or the big guys, but we don't have to really compete with those guys. So we're kind of our own thing. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Now, obviously the bourbon boom that we're experiencing is helping you guys a lot, but my sense is that you are an OG bourbon drinker. And so when you were coming up and you were starting to collect all these vintage bottles, what was your most prized possession?
Man, I remember just loading up on the A.H. Taylor Tornadoes and just loving those and just drinking them. I mean, I remember events that we'd go to and we would just be drinking them out of the bottle. I mean, it didn't matter. We were, we're just crushing those things. And but those were the fun times, and stuff like the American Spirit was on the shelf. You could, as a new bourbon, as somebody was getting into bourbon, you could find these things on the shelf and really explore what is now harder to explore. Yeah. But there was a lot, less things on the shelf than there are today. I mean, we have a whole wall of stuff that's the new stuff that's out. So the contemporary kind of stuff. So that's very exciting to see that, this whole thing has just blown up as far as the options that are out there. You can go as expensive or as cheap as you want to. There's great bottles for under $30, under $40. So, I mean, it's definitely not like the old days, but it's still really fun.
Yeah. I mean, has it been hard to walk that line now as a business owner, knowing that you have to price stuff competitively, but also as a bourbon lover to know that some of these really great bourbons just aren't available anymore?
Yeah, it's tough to price things as a business owner. We have to have replacement costs, income, payroll, everything, because we are doing it legal. So we have to have all that stuff built into our costs, and it is discouraging sometimes, but at the end of the day, we don't have a problem selling things. I mean, it's supply and demand, and people are going to pay for it. And if one customer doesn't pay for it, the next one will. So, I mean, it's a luxury to be able to walk in here and find anything you want to on the shelf and some people are willing to pay that and some aren't. And it for me, it's like I'm happy to be able to provide that to anybody that can come in and like I said, we have bottles from $12 all the way up to $20,000. So we'll find you something in your wheelhouse, in your budget, in your palate, wherever you want when you come in.
Yeah. And it's super encouraging to be able to walk into a store and see the whole line of Weller or BTAC or Pappy, and it's available for purchase. It's not just for show.
Yeah.
So what you guys are doing here is fantastic, and I don't mean to hit pause on our interview, but I am itching to try this Knob Creek 15 year.
It's a good one.
So now this is a barrel pick that you all did, right?
This is a barrel pick we did, yeah. So we like I said, we picked 5 barrels, I think, and we got some chug in there. But we were lucky enough to get it early in the year when a bunch of them were coming out, and at the older age statement. Now I think they're all back to 9 and 10. Every now and then you'll get a 15 or 14 thrown in there. But man, it's for 50, 56, 58 bucks a bottle. It's incredible.
I can't believe that's what y'all are going to price this at.
Yeah. So
Wow.
then that's what we priced them all. But I think starting July 1st, the price of Knob Creek's going up. Little insider information there. $8 a bottle is going up. Kentucky and 16 nationwide. So outside of Kentucky, yeah. So you buy Knob Creek now before it goes up.
Just to make you all jealous, this is, just on the nose, it's just a bomb of maple syrup and brown sugar. And I cannot. This might be the most special whiskey we've had on the podcast so far. So I'm going to make sure to rub it in to my co-host Brad. But let's give this a taste.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That might be one of the better ones we brought in.
Now is this a barrel proof as well?
It's 120 proof.
Wow.
So they brought it down a little bit. Okay. I can't remember going when we did the barrel. It probably was probably close to 130 or so, and they probably brought it down.
Yeah, this is great. Really smooth, really smoky on the finish too. Great. So Justin, as you guys look to expand, you said you're starting another franchise out in Louisville. What are your ambitions? What are your hopes for the House of Bourbon?
Man, we're really kind of locked into Kentucky. We could go to a couple different markets, but right now we just want to focus on servicing Kentucky and the tourists that come to Kentucky. Louisville was not expected to be this soon after we opened Lexington, but we're fortunate enough to be very successful here and want to expand to Louisville and kind of dive into the bourbon culture there, which is such a great city, such a great growing bourbon hub, and probably ground zero for most of the bourbon things that are going on. So it's exciting to go there and expand. But after that, I'm not really sure. We don't really haven't looked too far ahead. We want to get Louisville up and going and see if we can handle Louisville and Lexington.
Right.
That's what it's a little scary.
Well, I have to say, first of all, Justin, thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you for this wonderful bourbon.
Thank you guys for coming in.
If you are ever in Lexington, Kentucky, if you're ever looking for a specialty bourbon, or you just want to talk to a couple guys who know everything about this product, come down to Justin's House of Bourbon. It's right downtown. They will absolutely find what you are looking for, and it's going to be available either on their shelf or in their bar. So Justin, Sloan, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to seeing you guys again.
So that was Justin's House of Bourbon. Brad, seriously, cool place.
Next time I am in Lexington, I will be getting out to Justin's House of Bourbon.
Absolutely. Justin gave us that bottle of Knob Creek 15 year, and I brought some up for Brad to try. I cannot wait for you to pop the cork on that bad boy.
I am super excited to try that.
Next week, we're going to be back talking about the 1954 Best Picture winner, On the Waterfront.
We're just on a Best Picture kick.
We are. We're finally back in the Oscar race, man. For the Film and Whiskey Podcast, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
We'll see you next time.